Hello everyone. Good afternoon. Maupay nga kulo paaton nga tanan, maupay nga kulo paaton mga mamarati.
This is Bátì UP Tacloban.
Welcome to this episode of Tsika-LIT, Literary Conversations for UP Tacloban celebration of the National Literature Month. This afternoon, we have BA Communication Arts students, Melian Ayuban, Lyka Mae Taboso, Ronah Marie Ganzo, Sophia Suello, and Adrian Espares. They are all second year communication arts students of UP Tacloban. Hi, Melian.
Hello ma'am, good afternoon. Hello everyone. Hi mga mamarati dida, hapay akolop.
Laika.
Hi everyone. I hope you're having a nice afternoon today.
All right. Thank you, Laika. Rona.
Hello everyone. Good afternoon, ma'am. Mayong adto natong tanan sa mga naminaw.
Maayong udto. Sophia.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope we're going to enjoy this discussion today.
Yes, we do, right? We do hope that you enjoy our session this afternoon. And Adrian.
Hello ma'am, hello everyone. Maupay nga kulo kayo nga tanan.
Yes, maupay nga kulop. Adrian, maupay nga kulop. Nga how haaton nga tanan. So this afternoon, our participants, again, second year communication arts students of UP Tacloban, will be reading poems. And after reading their poems, they will share with us their thoughts or their feelings about the poem that they will read. First off, we have Melian Jane, who is to read Marks by Linda Pastan. Melian.
I hope you guys would enjoy. Marks by Linda Pastan. My husband gives me an A for last night's supper, an incomplete for my ironing, a B plus in bed. My son says I am an average mother, but if I put my mind to it, I could improve. My daughter believes in pass or fail and tells me I pass. Wait till they learn I'm dropping out.
All right.
So that's it.
Thank you very much, Melian. So again, the poem is Marks by Linda Pastan.
Yes.
Melian, would you like to share with us your thoughts about the poem?
Sure, Mom. So I am personally sharing this poem to you because the metaphor marks suits just perfectly to the story that this poem creates. So basically, the poem is about this mother who happens to be the speaker who is being graded for, every act, in this case, the household chores that she does. So like the one grading her or giving her assessments is her own family, and it's a situation she feels very saddening because it's as if portraying a life that is only bound for judgments and less of appreciation. So yun yung nakikita ko po. So for me, parang this poem is worth sharing because you see, at some point of our lives, we give specific marks or grades to people around us. And this poem tells us or reminds us that sometimes we should be sensitive towards how we treat people, or probably what we say to people, because it might cause them to feel unloved or unappreciated.
All right.
So I'm thinking, yes po. So also I'm thinking na, what if every time they do something, especially for us, instead of thanking them, we give them a judgment in return. Some are even harsh comments. So I want to break that po. Like this poem gives us this idea na we should thank the people who are very much into us, who are very much helpful into us. So yeah, we should shower them with like gratitude instead of surprising them with harsh comments po. That's what I see.
All right. Thank you very much, Melian.
Oh.
I agree that this poem really is told by a mother. The persona in this poem
Yes,
is a mother narrating or sharing with with us, probably the readers or the audience,
Oh,
how she is graded by the members of the household, her husband, her
yes po.
son, her
Her
daughter.
daughter.
And then
Yes.
there's that final line that says, "Wait till they learn I'm
I'm
dropping out."
dropping.
What does that mean? What could that mean?
When I think of the words I'm dropping out,
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think that she's gonna, do something rash. The way I see it, I remember my mom. I remember what my mom tells me, nga, or um, it would go something like, if I don't work, none of you will ever survive, or something like that. And to me,
Yeah.
I'm dropping out would mean I'm going to quit my responsibilities. So therefore, you have nothing to judge me on.
Yes po. I would like to add na napansin ko rin po sa poem na parang it depicts something like how women should always know how to serve, and that it somehow seeks to capture, the audience attention to the issue of women's suppression and discrimination. So parang na-feel ko po yun sa poem.
Mm-hmm.
Parang in a way, it also attempts to demonstrate the mother's disapproval of the idea of being a student. Like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm not a student, I'm your mama. You should not be treating me this way. So throughout the poem, Paston uses the extended metaphor of being graded by her
Mm-hmm.
family as a way to show how women are not really forced, but somehow to live as servants. So I think
Mm-hmm.
that is what really makes this poem special gyapon po. Like a depiction of reality is being tackled here, and it's not just, a mere poem na wala lang. Pero for me naman po, all poems are made from various inspirations, and ito na nga po, yung poem na Marks may be inspired from women's oppression or
Mm-hmm.
discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
Yan po.
Um,
All
Hi,
right,
ma'am.
Sophia. Yes.
Okay, so while reading the poem, while Millian read the poem, I got the feeling that it tackles about the pressure of the responsibilities of a
Mm-hmm.
mother that or rather a stereotypical idea of a mother that the society has instilled on people, and it's like the persona is standing up for herself at the end. Like I got that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, when I read the poem Marx, or when I heard Melian read the poem Marx, I think that it's sort of, I agree with her when she said that it's about gender suppression or female suppression, because it seems as though women are stuck with those given categories. It's like they are being graded with what they do in this area, or they don't have the freedom to go with other fields or something like that, because they are mothers and they're supposed to do this, and not really everyone is fitted to become a mother. So not everyone is really good at ironing clothes or
Mm-hmm.
serving their husband or their kids. So I agree with what they said, that it's like an expression of a mother who wants like some break from
Mm.
all
Yeah.
these standards.
Yeah, exactly. It's as if she's saying that, guys, I'm doing all these. Just give me a break. Cut me some slack.
I was actually trying to say that this poem is a beautiful, para siyang alarm, no?
Mm-hmm.
Na it's showing us the reality that something that's unacknowledged at home,
All
no?
right.
That we tend to parang criticize our mothers, that they have to do all the tasks at homes. And yes, I also agree that this is some kind of a about oppression, no? But
Mm-hmm.
actually, this is a call for us to love our mother more, to appreciate them,
Mm-hmm.
more than just looking at what they have to do, and yeah, the importance of being a mother.
Very, very interesting point there, Adrian.
I would like to add something, ma'am.
Yes, Sophia.
It actually reminds me of the remarks women get, like for example, a lady cooks a dish and people would say, ah, pwede ka na mag-asawa. So it's like
Mhm.
it's like giving a grade or a mark to that woman that she can pass as a wife. So it's it reminds me of that remark.
All right.
Mm.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you very much, Sophia, for that additional remark about the poem. I think we're
Oh,
ready now to
sure.
proceed to Lyka's chosen poem, My Papa's Waltz by Theodore Roethke.
Okay, I'll be sharing this poem that I
Mm-hmm.
really like the instance I read it. That's really rare because I don't really read a lot of poems. Okay, so My Papa's Waltz by Theodore Roethke. The whiskey on your breath could make a small boy dizzy, but I hung on like death. Such waltzing is not easy. We romped until the pans slid from the kitchen shelf. My mother's countenance could not unfrown itself. The hand that held my wrist was battered on one knuckle. At every step you missed, my right ear scraped the buckle. You beat time on my head, with a palm caked hard by dirt, then waltzed me off to bed, still clinging to your shirt. Okay, um, I really I really like this poem. The reason why I'm sharing this poem is maybe it's not at the first read it may not seem like a cathartic or introspective poem. What it does evoke is, feelings of nostalgia and actually maybe even pity for the persona because it has subtle cues of domestic abuse. It depends on where you're drawing from. And the reason but to me the reason why I think it's cathartic is because it's about to me I when I look at a persona or when I try to analyze a persona, I don't think of it as a child narrator. Rather, I think of it as a grown man reminiscing about his childhood, about a fond memory of his father that may not seem so fond to outsiders. And that's the thing about relationships. A relationship to you may seem completely different as to how other people from the outside view it. And to me, I think this poem is largely illustrates the sort of like toxic relationship between father and son, between a drunk father and a boy who didn't know any better but to love his dad. And this person now it's like a poem coming to terms with his feelings, that he knows that it wasn't exactly a fond memory or it was actually harmful to him, but at the end of the day he realized that he still loved his dad regardless. And yeah, um it's it's special because it's actually multi-layered. I mean, first when you read it, you'd be scared, you'd be fearing for the boy because it's lightly touching on domestic abuse, but then almost like but then you read it again and again, and then you get these phrases. You learn that when he was still clinging to his shirt, you then begin to consider that maybe it isn't just out of fear, maybe it's actually out of love, out of trying to hold on to something that you don't want to disappear. And yeah, it's like an emotional journey after reading it multiple times. And the more that you read it, the more that you discover the elements, like how it's pretty neat that the title is My Papa's Waltz and it's written in iambic trimeter, and that the persona may not be a child narrator but a grown man reminiscing about his childhood. So I think this poem, for people who have experienced similar experiences, I don't have experiences like this, but it makes me feel, and I guess that's the power of words, because then you understand circumstances that you didn't even experience. I hope for everyone who gets to read or listen to this poem, they come to terms with some of the childhood pains that they had, that they actually felt like some sort of weird affection for it, even if it was damaging to them. And I think it's just about admitting that you were a child then and you only knew how to love.
Wow, that was really insightful. I mean, we're expecting that the boy should detest the father for being violent, for being harsh. But here's the stanza that says, "You beat time on my head with a palm caked hard by dirt, then waltzed me off to bed, still clinging to your shirt." The boy still clinging to the father, despite or in spite of what he did, right?
I like when like I said about when like I mentioned about coming to terms, because I really think that if you would look at, if you are a kid who look at your father like that, who see your father drinking and then doing such things, you would think of like, why is he doing that? And that's not right. But li- like I said, she viewed the poem like it's a grown man coming to terms with his memories of his father, and he's slowly understanding why his father is acting like that. Maybe because maybe he's not just a drunk. Maybe there's a reason because of that. Maybe there's a uh there his father maybe having some issues, and he couldn't express it in a different way. And now that he's older, he has problems himself. He is coming to terms with the issue, and he get to understand why his father has such behavior.
Right. Thank you very much, Rona. This reminds me what you just said, Rona. May I relate also what I'm going to say to the first poem that we um, discussed, the one by Linda Pastan, Marks, which was read by Melian. That poem is about a mother getting graded by the members of the household on how she does the household chores, and how she does the ironing, and how she prepares the supper, the meal of the family. Well, in this poem by Theodore Roethke, here's a son um, telling us the narrative, probably of his childhood, of how he waltzed with his father, literally or figuratively. You see, as children, it made me think of us as children, having we sometimes or oftentimes have these expectations of our parents, how they should be, how they should act, what they should do, as parents. And we have high expectations of them, and we sometimes forget that they're human beings, they're people, and they have other things that they have to attend to, aside from parenting, aside from attending to our needs. It's really unfair to judge them, merely as parents. They're bad mothers, they're bad fathers. When you're a bad father, you're a bad person. They are something else, they are someone else, outside the home. Say, when they're not with you, or not when they're not with you, they're someone else.
Yes, ma'am, I actually completely agree. I think one of the things that interests me about my Papa's Waltz is that it actually humanizes the drunken father. It doesn't paint him as a demon. Here we
Mm-hmm.
get details into his life that he is probably, a hardworking laborer. And since, he's an alcoholic, it means that he has some deep rooted issues that he's experiencing and that he ends up expressing it, with violence. I think it's also interesting that, I mean, this may be a reach, may so how the persona described his aggressive or physical manifestations or tendencies. I think I think maybe you can look from another perspective, that the boy actually sees that his father is trying. Like, for instance, here in this line, at every step you missed. I think when you relate it to dance, we sometimes we miss steps, and we don't do it intentionally. It's just we happen to make a mistake. And I suppose his father has just, kept making mistakes, not because he's purposely doing it, but I think his circumstances have led him to, to to that kind of consistent behavior. So I think that's why I think I've written an essay about it as to how the father here in this poem is a human just like the boy, except that he's struggling with other things. Like he has this internal conflict of being a dad, being a respectable father, and then at the same time trying to fight his demons with, with alcoholism and having and being poor, I think.
Yes, I think my takeaway from this poem is that we should be like what you said. I think Rona said this already earlier, and also been implied by you, like that we should be more understanding when it comes to our parents, that they have their own demons to deal with aside from, parenting us, guiding us, nurturing us, doing their duties as parents, as father, as mother. We should be more understanding. We should give them break. We should cut them some slack. And but what's sad about it, when we're children, when we were younger, and even now actually, we as children we tend to be selfish. I mean, demanding much from them, especially when we were younger. You buy this, you do this for me, things like that. But we only thought about ourselves. We were not aware of our parents' struggles. But now that we know better, I think it's 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 time that we look back, we evaluate also our actions, uh, ourselves as children, and how we relate to our parents. So
I
yeah.
I actually agree to everything that you said. It's the son loves his father despite um the issues of his father, like being alcoholic, but it just shows, maybe to some readers, it's like a toxic kind of love, but there are things we don't know. It's just a single angle, and we don't really know what kind of relationship the son has with his father. And we would like to look at our parents as our role models, right? But maybe we also forget that role models are not perfect, because if a role model is perfect, then that would be unreal. Like, those people we consider as role models are humans who are bound to commit mistakes, and we have to be understanding because there are a lot of factors in a relationship, and we have to examine every angle and not just narrow our perspective on things. And yeah, that's why I agree to everything that you said.
All right. Thank you very much, Sophia. Thank you for sharing with us your thoughts. Anything else before we proceed to the next poem, which is an equally interesting poem? Yeah, yes, Melian.
I just would like to point out that this poem just overflows, unconditional love. It's always there. It tells us that no matter how, parang we see that even though may mga taong hindi natin na-expect na magaganito sa atin, na dapat ganyan, dapat ang pag-treat nila sa atin ay iaano tayo, parang sasaktan, there's still love that is present there, and it's really portrayed in the poem, and I like it personally.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lyka, for sharing it.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Melian. So that was My Papa's Waltz by Theodore Roethke, read by Lyka Taboso. Thank you, Lyka. Thank you, everyone. The next poem, it's a Waray poem, a Siday, entitled Dinumdom Ko Ikaw, written by Iluminado Lucente. Adrian will read to us the poem. Adrian?
Kung narapit na ang adlaw matunod, nga mo hirayo ako. Naputok in kakul bahadughan, ngang kamingaw, asay kudako. Pagtikang hinpanuruhan tunog, habukad mga dahon panhumog. Hininluha daw burabod, waray hunong hinpagtubod. Kung nadangat na ang gabi, nadugang ang kamingaw. labi kun nabati panhunihan kalaw. Pagpulahan sidlangan, pagpunias sa nadlaw, ang pagkalpadan maya, dinumdum ko ikaw. Nainop ko, kaninmaging adlaw, hinimaya nga hingpit gayud. Labi ikaw hanupod ko pagtanaw, pakapusak kan mga butod. Kundi iday, nadugang ang kasamdong, kananlipay nangingibay-ba, pakahulop ngan paglaom, ibaligya mo hiniba. Salit pagsasalidsid, ang mapawa nga adlaw, ay taas nga bukid, taop ang kasilaw. Panhuni ang gangis, upudan kamingaw, duyog nga pagtangis, dinumdum ko ikaw. Okay, so this poem actually is famous. However, on the form of a song. I think we're all familiar with this song. Oh, this is a Waray song. No?
Can you sing it
I'm sharing
for us?
this
Do you know a portion of
okay,
it?
only the first. Kung harapit na nadlaw matunog, nga mo hirayo ako. Naputukan ka kulba dughan, ang kami nga wasay gud ako. Pagtikanghan panuruhan tunog, mga dahon bukad panungo. Ininluha daw burabod, waray hunong pagtubod. So that's the song. I don't know if I
Wow.
hit
Oh,
the
thank you very much,
notes
Adrian.
properly. But actually, I'm sharing this CDI. I already had this in mind before you told me to share a CDI because I want to somewhat like promote Waray literature. Growing up, I am fond of listening to Waray songs, and so eventually I like Waray literature. No, actually, amo gyapon niya nag uh, udyok
Mhm.
akon to take com arts and to stay in Baka. And actually, my classmates call me kadaan for this kuan hobby of listening to of, of liking, loving Waray songs and literature. And actually, it's just now that parang I accepted it, no? Kay we really have to make Waray literature resurface the publication. Kay it's like in the margins na, no? Unacknowledged and parang on the way of being forgotten. And this poem somehow actually suits the present status of the world where I think relationships have shifted to LDRs, no? Because this poem is about uh, missing someone. No? Siguro, Iluminado Lucente is missing someone he loves that time, maybe sometime in 1906. And what's special about it is this is the first time that I felt my song choice was accepted because sometime in my junior high we have to perform a song and I suggested this song and they liked it. Actually, I was trying to teach them this song pero hindi ko kaya because of I'm not a singer. Thanks to our principal who used to be a Balangao member, she taught us this song. And this is, I feel like accepted with this song, with this poem. Actually, it's just now that I found out that this is a poem. Hindi mo lang ngayon niya nga kanta, no? And it's beautiful because of the imagery. Iluminado Lucente parang gave a new meaning to kapag punias iton adlaw, which I thought before, it was a romantic scene. Romantic nga you're happy with your loved one or with your family. But Iluminado Lucente made it parang sad kay he's missing someone. And this scene reminds him of that someone nga an kamingaw na parang naduroy ito nga tak na ang kamingaw mas na na-empower ito nga time kay 'di ba it's supposed to be parang you are with your loved one. And actually, with his Siday, I think they're not yet lovers. Kay in the third stanza, sa may last na sa niya, akahulop nga ang paglaom, ibaligya mo iba. Na maybe he's a suitor pa lang. Kumbaga, he has a crush on someone and they were apart for some time and that incited him to write this poem. No? Parang he is mm, uncertain pa nga bangin makabilinghin iba. That's my parang interpretation of this poem.
Thank you very much, Adrian. I agree. Inihiya nga si Day kay naangay panahon niya na. Sing mo pa, Adrian, ang mga tao yan na may mga karelasyon, naka-LDR or ano ito, long distance relationship because they can't be together. Some people can come home, can go home because of travel restrictions. And this song actually captures what most of these people feel right now. Kamingaw, na hihidlaw na hirahit ira mga hinigugma, the people they love, they cherish, and they have this longing to go home, right, to their loved ones.
Yeah, I think the quarantine has actually reminded us of how hard it is for people back then who didn't have the luxuries that we have now, like phones or social media. Like, and even phones and social media alone isn't enough or can't be equate with with the actual presence of the person. Also, I think what the whole message that I got from this beautiful poem is that I noticed that, with with every passing like gesture of time, or when the sun is setting, or even when just there's dew, the leaves, I noticed that if you're brokenhearted or if you're missing someone, it's just mundane things like this, or reminders that time is passing, that makes it so painful to bear. And I think it's very touching for me when it came to that part where he said, or the persona said, that he had a dream and it was just the two of them watching the waves. I'm not sure if I got it right. And he was very happy. So it just proves that every mundane thing becomes special when it's the person that you love. Like, you could just be, I don't know, watching the waves. You don't even have to do anything remotely exciting. But if it's with someone that you love dearly, it becomes a moment to remember. That's what I got.
There's only one thing, Mom, I can say
Mm-hmm.
that this poem really makes me kilig. Yes, because imagine when someone writes a poem about you, parang namimiss ka niya, like, oh, it's so sweet lang ba kasi we know now, chat-chat na lang, less na ba't less na mga tao naghimon poem for you, and for me it's like super special ka talaga once himuan ka poem hini nga tao. So it's just so great ba. I hope it pag making poem for someone you love would still be a thing right now, because really it's so nice. Nakakakilig.
All right.
Yun lang.
Okay. Thank you, Melian. Thank you, Adrian, for sharing a love poem. Because so far, di ba yung the first two, sentimental but in another way, bittersweet. Well, this one is bittersweet also.
Um, I would just like to say there are words I did not understand because it's
Mhm.
Waray, but I really felt the persona's yearning.
Mhm.
And even though I did not understand everything, it's interesting that I felt how he missed that certain person, and it's really incredible that he was able to express it this way.
Okay, thank you, Sophia. How about Rona? I know Rona
Mm.
is, Cebuana, Visaya speaking.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, but did you understand the poem?
I wasn't really able to digest or decipher the whole poem because it's written in Waray. But um, I wanted to say something which like I already said. I would like to um highlight the third stanza which talked about the waves, because personally I like looking at the ocean or the waves, and it's very calming. And he was saying that it would be better if the other person is there. So it's it, as like I said earlier, she already said this. she It would be much better to see the view with someone that is special to you. It makes everything better. It makes everything let's say more colorful.
Right.
More complete.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Rona. Thank you, everyone. Um, I'd like to emphasize also what Adrian said earlier about promoting our local literature, Waray literature. We have a lot of works that have yet to be read but by the younger ones, by you young people. This one, you're right, Adrian, about this being a famous love song. I remember also sing this in class, but hindi solo singing, but together with my classmates in music class when I was in my first year in high school, and that was, I don't know, decade or more than a decade ago. Our music teacher made us sing this song. So yes, there's this need for you to not just to read literature in general, to appreciate literature in general, may it be English, American, but let's pay attention also, special attention to our own, to Waray literature, because, well, simply because, well, it's our own language. The, the body of works depict our, say, experience as Waray people. And and just like any other body of literature, American, English, uh, Chinese, Japanese, and all the other literature of other regions. Um, we have our literature has its own, say, aesthetics, has its own, well, imagery, has its own elements that deserve to be appreciated, also that deserve to be studied. So I hope that this is not the last time that you will read Waray literature. All right, I think we're done with Dinumdom Ko Ikaw. Thank you again, Adrian, for sharing with us this poem, for reading to us this poem. Thank you to the rest of the team, the participants, for sharing your thoughts about the poem. Now we proceed to the next one, to the next poem. It's The Leap by James Dickey. Rona will read to us the poem. Rona.
Hello again, everyone. So I will be reading um, The Leap by James Dickey. The only thing I have of Jane Mcnaughton is one instant of a dancing class dance. She was the fastest runner in the seventh grade, my scrapbook says, even when boys were beginning to be as big as the girls. But I do not have her running in my mind. Though Frances Lane is there, Agnes Fraser, fat Betty Lou Black, and the boys against girls relays we ran at recess. She must have run like the other girls, with their skirts tucked up so they would look like bloomers. But I cannot tell. That part of her is gone. What I do have is when she came with the hem of her skirt where it should be for a young lady, into the annual dance of the dancing class we all hated, and with a light, brave leap, jumped up and touched the end of one of the paper ring decorations to see if she could reach it. She could, and reached me now as well, hanging in my mind from a brown chain of brittle paper, thin and muscular, wide mouthed, eager to prove whatever it proves when you leap, in a new dress, a new womanhood, among the boys whom you easily left in the dust of the passionless playground. If I said I saw in the paper where Jane Mcnaughton Hill, mother of four, leapt to her death from a window of a downtown hotel, and that her body crashed in to the top of a park taxi, and that I held, without trembling, a picture of her lying cradled in that paper still as though lying in the grass, one shoe idly off, arms folded across her breast, I would not believe myself. I would say the convenient thing that it was a bad dream of maturity, to see that eternal process most obsessively wrong with the world come out of her light, earth spurning feet, grown heavy, would say that in the dusty hills of the playground some boy who did not depend on speed of foot caught and betrayed her. Jane, stay where you are in my first mind. It was odd in that school, at that dance. I and the other slow-footed yokels sat in corners, cutting rings out of drawing paper. Before you leapt in your new dress and touched the end of something I began. Above the couples struggling on the floor, new men and women clutching at each other and prancing foolishly as bears. Hold on to that ring I made for you, Jane. My feet are nailed to the ground by dust I swallowed 30 years ago while I examine my hands. So that's the poem. That's The Leap by James Dickey. And the reason why I chose to share that poem is because the first time I read it in Lit 100, I was like, so this is something everyone should read because it was interesting, it was intriguing, it was also entertaining at the same time. And um, although I know that it's a work of fiction, I found myself asking about different things that happened because for me it's like a crime issue or something because someone died and in your head you're like, why did she die? Did someone throw her out of the window or did she commit suicide? But mostly we'd think that it was suicide because it said that she leapt from the window. And so what I like about this is how the speaker talks about Jane, because the words that are being used here is that it's very clear that he admires Jane. For me, when I wrote an essay about this and I said that his way of describing Jane almost made Jane sort of a deity to me because um his description was very ethereal. You know, it's like Jane must be someone very special. Maybe she's very did you have the aura of someone very beautiful or very powerful, because the words that are being used are very fit to that kind of description. And also the symbolism, as I think it's the symbolism that is the gear of this poem, because first of all the word delete, it is used in very different ways. It's very ironic because the first time it's used, it describes, for me it describes Jane's welcoming of the future, like as said, the from the line a new womanhood, it's like she is welcoming the future. She is very ready for what's ahead of her. And as established in the poem, she is the type of person who's very driven, who's passionate about her life or what she wants in her life. And um so I think that it is a very it is a very wholesome description, the first leap. But then when the word leap was used about almost the end of the poem, it's like it's very it's not just sad, it's dark because it talks about death. However, I have this weird thought that because Dickey described Jane as almost ethereal. I thought that maybe somehow Jane's personality was like she was like a deity who, so a deity is not supposed to stay in her human body. She has to be let go of that. So maybe Jane was imprisoned in her life. Maybe Jane was not happy because um when the time this poem was written, it's women were not really free to do what they can do, not like now. So um uh, from her younger years, she was very passionate. She was sort of wild, and now she has four children. And as indicated in the poem, her husband, or the guy, or the man mentioned in the poem, was he betrayed her from the line on speed of foot, caught and betrayed her. So maybe she devoted her life on that family that she had, and she uh shifted her attention to this family, and then this um partner that she had betrayed her, and maybe she was left with the four children. Maybe she was very miserable. Maybe she wanted to get out of that. So I think the way symbol is used in this poem is very remarkable, and it's not just the word leap, also the word of the using of paper, because I think the paper here, the symbol of paper here, symbolizes the speaker's relationship with Jane. So it's fragile and it's indirect, because there's no mentioned scene in the poem that there was really a direct connection or conversation between um the speaker and Jane. He was also like an audience himself. He was looking at Jane, and he was just describing Jane the way he sees her. So he doesn't really know Jane that much, but even so, he was able to admire Jane. And I think um I think it's also relatable, because in the subtext there's a hint of patriarchy, and there's also um it's also romantic, and um it's also controversial. So it's a very dynamic poem, and that's why I shared it to you, because I think personally it's really great.
Yes, thank you very much, Rona. Thank you for sharing this poem with us. Thank you for reading it. And I agree with you about the poem um, being romantic and at the same time tragic. Well, romance. If there's romance, there's tragedy that comes along usually. Um, Imagine liking someone for how many years? I mean, um, paying attention to her moves, to her actions, in this case, to how she jumps, to how she leaps from one place to the other, how her skirt moves when she leaps, how she reaches for something and then leaps. And then the narrative moves to this part where the persona talks about how Jane, how the character leaps from a certain window to her death, and it's just tragic. Liking someone and your admiration just being nothing at the end. Personally, I like this poem. This is also one of my favorites because of how it handles the metaphor, the symbol of leaping, or that image of the leaping at first is associated to all these bright things, to the bright-eyed Jane Mcnaughton Hill, to this um, a girl who seemed to have a bright future ahead of her, but towards the middle, towards the end of the poem, we encounter here images of her leaping to her end, to her death, and it's just sad. Yes, this is a very emotional read. It's romantic, it's beautiful, but at the same time, it's tragic.
It hits hard the most when you read the last stanza. because especially these lines that my feet are nailed to the ground by dust I swallowed 30 years ago while I examine my hands. So it gives us a clue that, like, contrary to Jane, where she left, this guy was someone, I think he was someone who, like, unlike Jane, who was moving far ahead of others. This was the kind of person who most likely didn't move at all. Someone who didn't want to grow up or are scared of growing up. And that's why his feet were nailed to the ground by dust he swallowed 30 years ago. And that's why he's left with the the only memory he has of Jane is of that dance. It's because he was stuck in that period. And I guess it's very tragic. Like, apart from the dance, the next memory you have of this person, because you were too scared to do anything, was the fact that she leapt to her death. And that's why I think before, when I first read this poem, I was trying to figure out why the last line of the poem was while I examine my hands. Okay, I don't recall hearing the word hands or having it, some kind of significance. It was usually the legs because that's what you use to leap. And I think in this case, that's why the hands were mentioned, is because the persona, the speaker, since his feet are nailed to the ground, I guess he ponders onto his other limbs as to what he can do or what else can he do given that he's still stuck. And that's why he thought about, okay, what can I do with my hands? But again, another painful thing is that if your feet are stuck to the ground, and even if you do any actions with your hands, you're not actually moving at all. And yeah, I think that's the most painful part of this poem.
It seems, may I add that it seems that the persona is not only lamenting about what happened to Jane, or to the tragic death of Jane, but also about how he didn't do anything, right?
Yeah,
Yes, Laika.
like, yeah, I think it's apart from grief or tragedy, it's really regret, and it eats you up.
Yes, and there's this girl I really liked from grade school. I mean, I observed almost everything that she did. I adored her. I I obsessed over all of the things, almost all the things that she did while she was in class, while she was with the boys, the girls. All this time I liked her, but why did I not do anything about my feelings? Why did I not act on my feelings? So maybe the sadness, the tragedy is that also.
I the other very painful thing about it, I think, mom, is that they never really got to have a chance. They never had the moment that I think in every love story there's always that moment where two of them interact, or two of them at least look at each other's eyes. But this one, there wasn't anything. There was no connection, mutual connection between the two of them. So I think that adds to the tragedy of this one.
Mm. Imagining that you have this relationship, this intimate relationship with someone, but there really isn't. And when the relationship dies, or when the person, well, in this case, the person dies, you mourn over something that you actually did not have. And that's
Oh, I think what makes it worse is that you're haunted by the what ifs. It's because it's never really happened.
right. This made me think that the poem, that the leap is not really just about the leap that the Jane made, all the kinds of leap that she made, the happy and the sad and the tragic ones, but the leap that the persona did not do. I mean, risking to say, admit to Jane that he liked her, and now he's regretting that. He's mourning over Jane's death, more and more regretting about his, I don't know, what's the right term for that? yung katorpehan niya when they were younger.
For me po, parang the chain had also symbolized parang their only connection. It's like the only connection that they had with each other. Thus, he never got the chance to approach her good and give her his ring that he made for her. But she reached to touch the chain that he had made. Di ba, like, chains are supposed chains are supposed to represent linkage. But ironically, they weren't able to connect with each other. It's because of that tragic thing that happened to Jane. No, naglip siya doon sa window. And yun lang, yung only connection nila, yung chain na nahawakan ni Jane. But then, that chain, hindi sila nakapag-connect for kasi Jane met her, sudden death. And it was so surprising po. So that's what I see, how the chain was symbolized in that poem.
Okay. Thank you, Melian. That's another way of looking at the poem. How about Sophia or Adrian? Would you like to add something?
Um, the poem is very unfortunate.
Yes, I
It's
agree.
very unfortunate. Like, I wonder what it's like. I mean, I know what it's like to admire someone from afar, but like this personal to him, his admiration to Jane, I wonder what it feels like to just look at someone and not being able to be honest with your feelings to them. And it also makes me think how a lot of people want to be children again, to go back to their childhood, because they want to go back to the happy memories they made when they were children. And growing up could be cruel to some people. Like, growing up is not always beautiful to everyone, and it's just unfortunate that Jane um was chained to this unfortunate fate and ended up leaping from that window. And it's also unfortunate to the part of the persona who was not able to uh, be honest or even approach Jane and show her or tell her how much he admires her.
All right, thank you, Sophia. So now we see the
And
layers, the narratives in the poem. It's not just Jane's narrative, but it's also the persona's narrative, and both of these narratives are sad, right? Yes, Adrian.
I actually just want to share my amusement, no, of how the author wrote the poem. It's like wow, no, how he or she used the symbols like the ring, the chains, and the what's this the lip. No? How was the author again? It was John
It's James Dickey.
James Dickey. No, I feel amused kung paano niya gingamit ang symbols to tell us a sayang moment, kay sayang waray niya ka express ang iya self. Parang yung sinasabi ni Lyka na what if, and
Yes. All right. Thank you, Adrian. That was an interesting read. It's giving off this vibe that is similar to the first two poems. The vibe that the first two poems, My Papa's Waltz, and well, not so much with Marx, but more of Papa's Waltz. Yung vibe niya. I mean, the voice, the overall vibe that you get from the poem. That's just sadness. That is bittersweet. Okay, I think we're ready for the last poem, the fifth one, to be read by Sophia. The poem is I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth. Sophia?
Ah, yes. Hello again. So, I am going to read a poem I've encountered in junior high school. I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils. Beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze, continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not be in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or intensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils. I'm glad to share this poem because I can say that this is my personal favorite, but like out of all the poems I have encountered, this particular one stood out and left an impression on me, mainly because of the feeling I got when I read the poem. Like it's simple yet it is very wholesome at the same time. Like how it emphasizes the relationship of humanity to the natural world. So for me, it's comforting and healing in some way, and it has a positive effect, at least for me. And I hope you felt that too. So this poem is a breath of fresh air, especially in these trying times. It would be good to read some words that could offer a positive feeling to a lot of weary souls, me included. So yeah, we can't really tell, but we can almost feel what Wordsworth felt when he saw the daffodils. Um, I enjoy reading poems, but I'm no expert in analysis. But I am a reader who gets easily fascinated with how writers weave words together and paint a picture in the reader's mind. So I'm really amazed of um, the effective use of language in this poem, the rhetorical effect of the elements, and especially the evident use of personification. Like you can see a lot of personification in the poem, which connects humans to the nature. It's like saying or suggesting that we are one with the nature, and it is also rich in sensory details. So it makes the poem vivid to the readers, and it allows us to experience what the persona experienced at the sight of daffodils. And also, I would like to point out the rhyme in the poem. It for me, it suggests harmony. It's harmony that can be felt when looking at the daffodils, and it also suggests again the connection of nature and human. So it's like the main theme of this poem, the connection of nature, of humans to the natural world, and it also make us feel the peace and serenity in the persona's thoughts. So I also admire and appreciate the first person point of view in this poem because it creates an intimate connection. Like even if it's a personal experience of Wordsworth, it somehow also becomes a personal experience to us. So that is why I I really appreciate this poem, and I would like to I hope that the positive feeling that I got this poem you were also able to feel it along the words too. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much, Sophia, and thank you for sharing with us this poem. Do you agree with Sophia that this with this poem you feel a positive feeling? You feel happy about it? Yes, Laika.
Yeah, I agree. When I was reading this along with her, it made me really appreciative of the things that we have at our disposal because these are things that only nature can give. And I like the fact that Wordsworth, I think this is a poem that uses personification a lot. And I think by making them dance or making daffodils dance or when they twinkle, when they have such human qualities, it it reminds us that they're alive, that these things are alive. These aren't just objects that we can use for our own selfish desires. I think it's such a very it's an amazing feeling to have this kind of mutual relationship with nature where you take care of it, and what do you get in the end? You get a nice view, you get water, you get a starry night, and these are things that are irreplaceable no matter how advanced the world gets. And I think that's why this poem, now where climate change is prevalent, I think it reminds us of the joys that nature brings and that they're alive.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Laika. Melian. Yes, Melian.
Uh, the poem gives me this feeling na I want to become a steward of the environment. Like personally, I really love nature because it gives me fresh air. Everything I need is in nature. Like just reading along with Sophia, I felt that I really need to become more passionate towards making our environment cleaner, greener, because this is the only chance that we have for us to be able to live. So if there's no environment, there's no nature, so where it's extinction. So I think it also serves as an eye opener for us to to appreciate our nature. And because you see, if without nature, we'll all definitely will die eventually. So we must love our nature.
Okay. Thank you, Melian. Yes, Rana.
I would like to second the motion. No, I would like to emphasize what they said about it's the poem is sort of like a reminder that um especially now that we are struggling with the climate change, and it it to me it sounded like if you don't care about nature, then don't do it for yourself, do it for those others who cares, because you're not the only one who's living here, and you're not the only one, you're not the last person who's going to live here. So if you're not concerned with yourself, then maybe stop being selfish and actually think of the others who enjoy or who find significance in nature, because the poem really highlights what nature can do, and it's not just a view, it's actually very functional. We get we adapt from nature, our lives start from nature. So uh so that's it, I guess. It's a timeless reminder for us to look around and maybe care, stop being selfish, and start thinking about others.
That's right, Rona. I both agree with Melian and Rona what they said about taking care of nature. Adrian.
Actually, I don't know if it's Sophia or it's the poem, but the poem radiates a vibrant color. Parang
Mm-hmm.
bagan malipayon. Bagayan nagdadaig iton kalibutan, no? How how beautiful the world is, and it's like, as everyone said, it's inviting us to be good stewards of the world.
Yes, yes, I agree that it gives off.
That's how I look at how the poem uh, is reflecting a message to me.
All right. Yeah, yeah. To you as the reader. Well, it's true. Yeah, you're right about the poem inspiring in us this or instilling in us this will, this drive to take care of nature. It's also at first reading, I think the poem is just about you getting lost in the moment and wandering lonely as a cloud, savoring that solitude. And a great place to savor that solitude is, well, the outside surroundings, the outdoors. In this case, the outdoors that the poem paints is an outdoors that has trees, has dancing daffodils, and has this breeze, um, the stars that shine, and all these beautiful images of nature. And isn't it nice to just stay in that moment, uh, get lost in this moment, in this particular moment, and just be one with the daffodils, be one with the clouds, just be one with nature.
Yeah, I actually agree, ma'am. In the lines, I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in a pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. So it's like he's saying that looking at the daffodils, that was just not just a momentary joy, but something that is deeper and long lasting. And I think it's important to take a pause and
Mm-hmm.
appreciate the things that surrounds us, because nature, we are familiar with nature and everything that surrounds us, but we end up taking them for granted and overlooking them. So it is important to appreciate them, because we can actually find um serenity and peace by just being one with them.
Okay. Yes, I totally agree, Sophia. You know, in this world where there's anxiety, when there's tension, when there's pressure, um, it's just hard to relax. And this poem kind of reminds us to do just that, to relax, to breathe for a moment, just take in the air, dance like a daffodil. Okay, it seems that we've expressed now all the things that we want to say about this poem by William Wordsworth, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. Thank you once again, Sophia, for sharing this with us. Now, to end our session, our TsikaLIT episode, may I ask everyone for a message to our listeners, mainly about reading and appreciating literature, particularly poetry. But why do we need to read poetry? Yes, Laika.
To be honest, I only started appreciating poetry when I had to read it for a
Mm-hmm.
class. I guess back then, I was intimidated by poems that I couldn't immediately grasp. Like if I were to read The Leap maybe 5 years ago, I would have trouble understanding it other than the fact that someone died. But I think I think for people there who don't like poetry or those who've never actually read a poem, I think all it takes is to begin reading them and knowing how to appreciate them because appreciating poetry or reading poems, you never know, it actually may be cathartic for you. It actually, you never know, it might actually put into words feelings or situations or memories that you struggle to, put into words. And I think that's the power of poetry because poets are very artistic or creative geniuses of some kind who are able to capture something most of the time universal, something universal, and then put it into words, and that's for us to read. And I think that's the reason why so many people love poetry is that it makes them feel things which are from words, which are from letters, symbols, and it triggers their senses. And I think that is the true power of poetry. So I think if you're someone right now, who just happened to stumble across this this session because you had nothing to do, maybe try reading poems. It doesn't have to be the most like the long ones. You can just start by, widely anthologized poems, and then you never know, you might actually have a thing for poetry, and it might just be your new hobby.
All right. Thank you very much, Laika. Who's next? Rona?
Like I said earlier, that there are a lot of people who loves poetry, and she's right. But some lots of people also feel intimidated with poetry because they think it's hard to understand, because lots of poem uses very deep adjectives and literary devices, so they feel confused with studying or reading poetry. So they feel this sort of pressure, and I want to share that they should not feel that kind of thing, because poetry, I think literature is a free field. You can relate to this particular thing, but you can have a different experience. And it is very dynamic. You can see things from this particular poem that other people cannot see. And poetry is, it's not just aesthetically pleasing, it's also, for me, personally, I write poems with, there are words that, there are some feelings that I can write in prose or in short stories. So sometimes I write poetry, and I think it's a very useful form of expressing oneself, especially when you are trying to express very heavy feelings, very heavy emotions. So it's also very helpful for one's mental health, especially right now. So we need to exhaust different things to express ourselves, because not every time that people are there to listen. So you need to have your own avenue and where you're going to express yourself. So it, and also they shouldn't feel pressure on people criticizing their poems, because um, literature is meant to be read. But if you want to keep your poems private, it's also very welcome. So um they should see poems as how they see movies. Lots of people love movies, so I think they should um widen their view towards poetry, and they should maybe start thinking about it as fun and nice.
All right. Thank you very much, Rona. Yes, Melian.
So I want to make this simple. So just like stories, poems bring you to different dimension or situations, and it exercises your imagination. And you think, isn't it fun to travel from reality to the realm of fiction? So yeah, don't think poems as hard to understand. Think of it as a fun way of experiencing and viewing life from a different way or perspective. So try reading poems, and it'll bring you into different dimensions. That will be all.
Okay. Thank you, Melian. Adrian?
I know there are so many people out there who loves literature, but I'll take this opportunity para aghaton kamo nga lingion ang aton kalugaringon nga literature, especially ang siday, no? Ayaw naton ini babayi, ayaw naton kalimti, and especially ayaw naton pagtamaya kay amo ini ang aton pangilalan kumo mga waray, no? So let's love our own literature.
Okay. Thank you, Adrian. Sophia.
Uh, so I would just like to say that yes, it's true. A lot of people are intimidated by poetry, and it's like there's an imaginary barrier that prevents them from diving into poetry. And I understand that feeling, but there's actually so much to learn when you begin to explore the beauty of words, of language, and it's beyond the structure, um, beyond its elements. There's truth and reality in poetry, and there's so much that you can learn from it. So I hope um, to everyone who's listening to this discussion, there's even a tiny spark that you appreciate poetry and like start reading anything, because literature has so much to offer to people.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Thank you very much. kids, for sharing what you think about literature, what you think about poetry. Thank you for encouraging our listeners to read or to read more poetry, to read more literature, and Adrian, for also encouraging our listeners to read our own literature, our Waray literature, especially the Siday, the Waray poem. It has been a very meaningful afternoon with you kids. Thank you for making time to uh, be part of this session of TsikaLIT Literary Conversations. We've had a very insightful discussion of the poems you chose to share with us this afternoon. I hope the discussion on literature does not end here. The discussion on poetry, on why we should read poetry, does not end here. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Damo nga salamat niya, maupay nga kulo pa aton ng tanan.